Tampering podcast, part of the Athletic NBA Show Network. I'm Sam Amick, NBA national writer at The Athletic. Here, as always, we got a usual suspects pod with Anthony Slater out west, Fred Katz out east. Gentlemen, always fantastic to see you. We are in the middle of in-season tournament chaos. We are in the middle of the part of the regular season, IST be damned, if you will, where we actually know quite a bit about these teams after speculating all summer long, watching the preseason, watching the early regular season. We got real substantive stuff to talk about. On today's show, we're going to make the rounds a little bit, but not as much as we typically do, so that we can hone in on a couple of teams that we find pretty darn interesting. Slater and I were at the Warriors Kings game the other night, and within the context of the old IST, we're going to talk about that. But Warriors are going to be front and center. Clippers are going to be front and center. I see them tonight against the Warriors. I saw them last night against the Kings. And Fred coming at you with Knicks commentary. Gentlemen, what is going on?
Everything is going on, Sam. It's the in-season tournament.
Everything is happening.
It's all going on. It's all going on. You know what? It's really weird. So I covered the Knicks game on Tuesday night, and they beat Charlotte, and they blew them out, and they had to blow them out to make the in-season tournament. And they make the in-season tournament. And we're all asking questions. Oh, they're playing Milwaukee next. And we're asking about Milwaukee in the quarterfinals of the in-season tournament. And in the playoffs, first of all, it was probably the first time that a blowout win over a bad team in November ever kind of had the vibes of a big win. Like, when you guys are in the locker room after a big win, it's late in the season, or maybe it's the playoffs. It's late in the season. They're playing some team high in the standings, and they beat them, and they're feeling great about themselves. And the vibe is just kind of different. It was the first time. It was the earliest I've ever felt like big season or big win vibes in the locker room in the early season, especially with a game like that. But like we're going around and we're asking guys about it, and they're like totally into the in-season tournament. And right. I did not realize, number one, how much players being into the in-season tournament would kind of have a vicarious effect on people on the outside. Like I didn't think that players caring would just vicariously make me care about it more. And number two, it was so weird because in the playoffs, you have the big win, you move on, you're like, okay, well, what do you think next about this next team you're playing? And we're asking about Milwaukee, but it's like they have Detroit on Thursday and they have Toronto on Friday. And it's like we're all just kind of forgetting two random regular season games. Like, it's kind of weird. I feel like one small edit moving forward to the in-season tournament is they can make it so that like that last day, there are no games in between. Like, just, I know for scheduling, maybe they have to do that. Right. But it just feels like, okay, we're going to kill the momentum with a random ass game against a Detroit basketball team that cannot beat Western Kentucky right now. And a Toronto team that's whatever. So it's just like, I don't know. Feels
Western
weird.
Catching strays out here on the Tampering pod. Slater, as I throw it to you, and in that spirit, because I like the way that Fred tipped us off there, we're going to tackle IST first, because we got plenty of time to talk Warriors, Clippers, Knicks, and even in the context of the tournament. But for all three of us who have covered the league for a long time, it's few and far between when you're kind of faced with stuff that is entirely new, and it is fun and it is fresh. And to Fred's point about the little anticlimactic post, IST game hangover, if you will, I'm at a Kings Clippers game last night where I think the Kings certainly wish they didn't have that game on the schedule, because after beating the Warriors the night before, the energy just took an absolute nosedive, and so did their play, and they got waxed. You and I were at that Kings Warriors game the other night that maybe goes down as the best game of the year in terms of just chaos and energy and just madness. Where is your vibe? Where are you feeling about the IST?
Yeah, it's interesting. I know one of the things that the Warriors people even mentioned, and even talking to like Dario Saric, right, who's played in some of these cups overseas, which I think the NBA is kind of modeling it after, was I think what's different with the NBA is it also like overlaps with the regular season. Like, these matter in the regular season for teams who by the way, at this point of the year, right, are trying to correct themselves, including obviously the Warriors at this point. And, you know, Sam, we were in there pregame talking to Steve Kerr, and he brought up a hypothetical, which apparently Dario Saric is the one who brought it up to him. But, you know, because they had to win by 12. If they were up too late, do you give up a layup to go to overtime to try to win by 12? Like, what do you prioritize? Kerr obviously said they would prioritize regular season. You got to get that win. Don't worry about winning by 12. But then Steph Curry post-game, you know, he's kind of sitting in his locker. Me and Marcus Thompson we're chatting with him a little bit, and he kind of admitted, like, man, you know, they did go for some home run swings late, and maybe the point differential when they're up 6-8 with 2 minutes left does, you know, subconsciously impact the mindset. And then, you know, you fast forward the tape and they lose it. You know, it's tough to know for sure if they lost that game because of the in-season tournament stakes, and it is an important regular season game for them to lose. But it's new, it's fresh, it's creating weird scenarios and hypotheticals and stuff that we are never talking about in November, which is cool. It definitely created a better environment in Sacramento the other night, so it's good. And then there's all these like tentacle stuff to it also, where let's say the Warriors do win that game by 12, they then play the Pelicans in New Orleans, and the Pelicans are playing really well right now. And even if you win that, you get either the Suns and Lakers in Vegas. I don't think that's very good for them right now. I think it's better. You know what they got instead? The Blazers at home on Wednesday night in a very low stakes game. It's almost like you would have won. So
they're going to basically get that W back for regular season purposes.
Either that or a horrendous L if you lose.
Sure. No question.
But
well,
you know,
real
I mean,
quick,
like,
and conversely to what you said, the Kings were cracking me up because they didn't really seem to want to admit that the point differential thing was playing a part. And then Sabonis finally post game was, I thought, the most honest about it. He talked about the idea that, and he kind of bluntly said that if the point differential wasn't a factor in that kind of a game, when you're down 24, that you might let go of the rope, and that the idea that they knew that they had to lose by 11 or fewer in order to get to the knockout rounds was the kind of thing that kept them competing, kept them going. And next thing you know, that snowball gets bigger and you end up winning the whole damn game. Now, to your point too about the Warriors in that hypothetical scenario, and I think I might write a kind of a column today with a few notes talking about this particular item, is that, you know, Steph and the Warriors are down one as that clock is ticking down at the end of regulation. So technically they did actually kind of face a version of what Steve Kerr had talked about. If you want to go to the absolute extreme, does Steph decide to attack and try to get to the line and hit one of two free throws to go to overtime and then win by 12 so that you can.
The question would be if he hit the first, then, you know what I mean? You do everything. All right, you get the foul, you hit the first.
By heaving a three, you obviously are just wiping that scenario off the table. And he just was going for the win. It didn't work. But that pregame discourse that we had with Steve, it was funny because it was like a kidding, not kidding type feeling to it, where he was kind of, you know, being in jest, but then there was truth in what he was saying.
Yeah, I think I kind of mentioned it earlier, but like I think there's should this count towards the regular season? And I believe it should, because especially you want teams who are technically eliminated, not, you know, you still need them to care about the games. And that's one way to make them care about the games. Like, hey, this still matters in the standings. But I don't know. There at some point in the next few years, I bet is going to be like kind of an overlap scenario that creates an oddity, I'd guess.
And they're going to tweak. I mean, they've been consistent with that. Evan Wash is one of the architects from the league of the tournament, and he and the league have been real clear from the start. Like, it's not going to look the same next year as it looks this year. So that's phase 2 of this. You want
a flip side scenario? When the Kings were down like 7 with 2 minutes left, Jason Anderson from the Sacramento Bee I was sitting next to, and he made a good point. At that point, you're still thinking the Kings are probably going to lose. He's like, do they milk the clock late? Like, do you pull it out? Do you?
Right.
I'm like, I mean, you could.
More importantly, and this is a provincial reference, I said to Jason during the game, I said, and I think I tweeted it, do they light the beam if they lose by 11 and advance to the knockout rounds? I don't know.
Oh,
Fred,
man.
What do you got?
I think it has to count towards the regular season. I also think tiebreakers are going to be necessary and complicated if you're only playing 4 group games. 2 ways to make it a little bit easier on teams is, number one, you play more group games. like you in group play. Like you, instead of playing 4, maybe you play 8 and it's over 2 months, and you do the actual, tournament a month later. Maybe that's one way you do it. Or you just don't make point differential the tiebreaker. You find some other tiebreaker to make it. And that's the other way that you do it. I it's a little too quirky making point differential the tiebreaker. I don't think the players like it. That's the vibe that I've gotten. Like I was talking to Josh Hart after their game against Charlotte, and the Knicks were just talking willingly. They were like, yeah, we ran up the score. We had to. We knew point differential was a big thing. The Knicks didn't just have to beat Charlotte on Tuesday to get in. They had to win by probably more than 8, but there were a couple of out of pocket scenarios.
Did you
where
see what Boston did?
Oh my God. They hacked Andre Drummond up 30.
Up 30.
7 minutes left.
That's probably the worst case of this, right?
And Billy Donovan was not happy. I mean, look.
Yeah, you're having
Toronto,
peace treaty meetings between Joe Mazzulla and Billy Donovan at half court,
right?
Trying to massage
and Billy Donovan is not a complainer or an aggressive person at all. Like he's not somebody who comes out and says that stuff unless he really, really believes it. I mean, look, DeMar DeRozan got tossed from a game because Toronto put up a shot up 12 at the buzzer. And
this
DeMar
also might be a commentary on like where the Bulls are. We're right now. Everything.
Yes, we're just only talking about the Bulls.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And how
I don't know. I was
angry
talking about Josh Hart, and we're talking about it with Josh Hart, and he likes the in-season tournament, and he's also a really big soccer fan, so he kind of gets the inspiration for it, and he likes following it in soccer, and he compared it to that. But he also was talking about like it just doesn't feel right running up the score. Like everything we have all been told our whole lives is like you're up big with 3 minutes left. Like it's one thing to just keep playing. It's another thing to like actively be trying to run up the score against this team that you're playing. Like he's like, he said it hurts the integrity of the game was the way he put it. And I'm going to put words in his mouth now. I think he would say that it's just bad sportsmanship. And he felt weird about it. I think most players, while they understand that it's part of the objective and that these are the incentives the NBA put in, this is basically what Billy Donovan said. He said he wasn't upset with Joe Mazzulla. He said this is what the NBA is encouraging, and it's something the league needs to look at. And like I think there are maybe some other ways that they could get past this, because it does feel a little weird with the point differential. That being said, it is the first time in the history of the league that anybody has ever cared about a 30-point game in November.
Right.
And that's what the league wants. So maybe they won't change it, because that's
I might be guilty of, and again, we've all covered the league for a long time. I think when you cover it for damn near 20 years like I have, and then you have this freshness in late November that you've never felt before, even with all the quirks, even with the wrinkles that need to get ironed out, I am staunchly in the camp of, yes, I like it. Let's, it's something new. It's something easy, or not easy. It's something exciting. The players like it. Like you said, Fred, if they didn't respond to it, then this thing would be dying on the vine. But the players are responding. The fans and the media are responding as well. The other day, another little Kings tidbit, Mike Brown talked about how his coaching staff before each of their in-season tournament games had tried to get creative from a motivational standpoint, talking about how far $500,000 can get you in today's society, and reminding these multimillionaires, some guys like De'Aaron Fox who make 30 million plus, that let's not sniff at this cash, because that's of course the winning purse for the in-season tournament championship team. And they're putting PowerPoint presentations up of how much property you can buy in Oklahoma City for $500,000, how many bottles of red and white wine.
Okay.
You get. Yeah, exactly.
You said Western Kentucky's taking straight.
Yeah.
OKC.
I'm about to jump on Zillow and dive into OKC.
He's like, because 3 of you are going there at the trade deadline. So you need this information.
And then I was happy from a PR standpoint, Mike was wise enough to then also share with the people that they did also say, if you wanted to feed a lot of people over the holidays, a charity meal, that you could feed like 2,500 people, Christmas meals or whatever the number was. It's different. It's fun. And in that vein, let's dive into, before we do little mini deep dives on some of these teams and specifically the Warriors, Knicks, and Clippers, let's put our prediction hat on, because we got this bracket.
Can I chime in on that, Sam, really quick?
Yep, for sure.
One thing that I appreciate that most players are doing, I really really anticipated when all this stuff first came out. The players were going to say they wanted to win the in-season tournament, and they were going to say that they were just going to put it on their competitiveness and that winning is always important. The same way we hear players all the time say, like, my only goal is to win a championship, when like almost never that's a player's first priority. You know, it's like, I mean, people think the only other objectives are being selfish, but it's like,
Yeah.
you might just want a nice place to live for your family or whatever else, normal people stuff, you know? And I kind of thought that's what they would say about the in-season tournament. And one thing that has delightfully surprised me is how many players are just openly being like, no, it's about the money. Like it's totally about the money. Like somebody, Barbara Barker from Newsday, longtime Newsday columnist and reporter, asked RJ Barrett like last week. So are you like into this? Do you like the in-season tournament? Are you into it, or is it just like too much? And RJ said, if somebody offered you a chance, a free trip to Vegas to win $500,000, would you like that? Right. And okay, well, when you put it that way, it's a great point. Like Josh Hart just has a bit where like he just says he's just going to buy a ridiculously expensive Rolex, and he just wants the Rolex. When the Knicks won on Tuesday, he literally just tweeted out a picture of a ridiculously expensive Rolex watch. Like these guys are just like, Quentin Grimes was up there. He's like, I don't care. I want $500,000. That's a lot of money. And Julius Randle, meanwhile, is saying, yeah, I just care about a free trip to Vegas. That sounds really fun. So and then I asked him, is it about winning $500K in Vegas, or is it about going to Vegas? He said, oh, it's a chance to go to Vegas. That sounds great.
Yeah. So I mean, like, but the Vegas thing, there's also just like a curiosity of what the event's going to be. You know, it's just talking to a few Warriors players, you know, Kevon Looney, for example, like, right. He's been in like these like NBA finals environments and different stuff. And it's like, you know, he is like us. Like, I'm curious, like, what's this? Is it going to feel like a West Finals game in Vegas? You know, like, are there going to be celebs everywhere? You know, the pregame shows going live on the court. It sounds like ESPN and TNT are doing like meshed together coverage. Like, I just think there's a curiosity of, you know,
there is
in early December, just will it feel like a playoff game? And
I
maybe
mean, full
it will,
disclosure,
maybe it won't.
I'm going, which is not, I mean, that's part of the role. But if you pin me down and said, what's your motive, your intent, your strategy for covering the in-season tournament, I will get there eventually to figure that out, because that's part of my job. But the curiosity and that general feeling of like, it's history. I want to go and see it. I want to see what it looks like. And I think that's real.
Part of the appeal
neutral crowd
of the
too is going to be interesting.
Yeah, neutral crowd. Although if the Lakers are there, I don't know how neutral it's going to be.
Yeah,
but part of the appeal of the playoffs to guys is everybody's watching. You know, like, this is the game. It's like the ABC Saturday night game, whatever. And that'll probably, I mean, we'll see. I think it's been very, you know, I think it's very positive check marks in pool play. We'll see how the elimination rounds go. But I mean, the assumption right now is like, you know, a lot of people are going to be watching the finals, right? It's an isolated game on a Saturday night. Like, players like knowing that, hey, like the world is watching, including Fred's Indiana Pacers, right? Tyrese Halliburton, never been in an NBA game.
Well, that's the thing, Slater, to build off that point, because you're right. I think the thing I like about even the pre-knockout round in-season tournament games, it gives the spotlight to a bunch of teams that typically don't have it. And a lot of fans for decades have been exhausted with the league and the TV partners, you know, kind of unofficial calculus of New York, LA, Chicago, you know, round robin, national TV games. Warriors, of course, because of what they've done. But the idea that now in Indiana and Sacramento and teams like that can have legitimate games where that spotlight is brighter, you see the players then respond. That is giving this part of the calendar a relevance that it didn't have before. So, no, I mean, it's been fun. Again, it's got all kinds of quirks. It's going to look different going forward. Let's get into
well, honestly, Sam, if you look at the teams that make it, it bodes well for the people who think that the NBA is scripted, because it's the exact formula that the NBA would want. It's lots of huge market, major glamour franchises, and then each conference kind of has the young, scrappy, really fun to watch smaller market, right? Like in the East, you've got the Knicks in there. You've got Giannis and the Bucks in there. You've got the Celtics in there who get in there just on point differential when Orlando could have been the team that got it. And then you've got your scrappy Pacers team, which, people don't necessarily know, but are really fun to watch and might win over some fans.
Fred's winner. We can just
Fred,
reveal
you're
it
trying
now.
You've got the Lakers, you've got Kevin Durant's Phoenix Suns, and then you've got Zion in there with the Pelicans playing great, and then you've got like that unbelievably fun Kings team, which is kind of the Pacers of the West, and it's like that's a great formula for the Lakers or for the NBA. I mean, like it worked out.
I was like, ooh, okay, now I know
right
who
there.
he's picking. I love this path for the Lakers.
I have a single track mind on this podcast.
Oh,
man.
I have a single track mind. It's a great formula for the NBA and a great formula for the Pacers, who were undefeated in group
You said
play.
Lakers.
Are you calling a Pacers win over the Celtics?
Yeah, hold on. Let's go. I'm trying to get these damn predictions. Pacers, Celtics. Fred Katz. What do you got?
Please.
I mean, all right.
Home
he's
team.
moving the Pacers on.
Home team, Indiana Pacers.
In a stunning upset, road upset, I'm taking the team without home court. I'll take your Boston Celtics.
All right. I'm taking Boston as well. They might drop 170 on your favorite team, Fred. Bucks.
They already
Knicks.
beat them by 50. So
That's right. Good God. And you're still picking your Pacers. Way to go, buddy.
yeah,
Way
revenge game. Halliburton didn't play in that game.
Objective. We
I-
know.
Sam,
I'm
what
curious-
did
I
I
do wanna-
say? What did I say when they lost that game? They lost by like 52. They didn't have Halliburton. I said if Halliburton played.
Oh, that's
won
right.
by
They didn't
7.
have Halliburton. All right. Fair.
Pacers by 7 at home. That's
Fred, do you have Pacers underwear on right now? I just tell the people the truth. We need to know.
You will never know what kind of underwear I'm wearing, Sam.
All right. Bucks, Knicks, keeping it out
Is
east.
that in MSG?
No, it's in Milwaukee.
Milwaukee. Okay.
If it's not in Milwaukee, then I'm going to be watching the game on TV from some bar that serves amazing sausage.
Got you. You're going to Milwaukee. Who are you picking?
Bucks.
Yeah. Bucks, Celtics, or Bucks? Are you picking Pacers over Bucks in Vegas?
I'm
Oh, we're doing the whole bracket now, huh?
Might as well.
yeah, I'm going Pacers over Bucks. Yeah.
All right. There's his East bracket. I'll take Celtics.
You got Celtics coming out the east. All right.
Yeah.
Well, who'd you pick in Bucks, Knicks later?
I'll take Knicks in an upset.
All right. I'm close on that one. I'll take the Bucks. I think Giannis and Dame, they've figured out their clutch time. They're not dominant, but they're getting it done. I think they beat New York. Then coming out the east, oh man, I got Boston coming out the east. All right, going out west, we got Lakers, Suns. That is definitely an NBA favorite matchup.
I'm taking Suns. They've been playing better. Durant looks great right now. I mean, the Lakers are kind of, I don't know. Like sometimes the Lakers are looking dominant, like in Detroit.
They beat the Pistons
team. But also, what did they lose by in Philadelphia? Like
44. 44. And LeBron said a lot needs to change. That one, by the way,
it was like on NBA TV. I randomly had NBA TV on in the background. I saw LeBron was talking. I was like, "Ooh, they lost by a lot. I want to hear this." And it was like, "Did you actually see that interview?" It was like
I did, yeah.
the most no comment interview I've ever seen from him.
Yeah, I think it was my buddy Dan Wojcicki of the LA Times asking the question, and yeah, he got some truth out of LeBron. That one, by the way, I love the fact that, and this is just kind of a pretty cool thing, that Durant and LeBron go 3-4 years without facing each other, and then all of a sudden we get a couple of these matchups, and this one being on this kind of a stage. I'm all for the old heads fitting in as many matchups as possible. I have got the Suns coming out of that one. Fred, what say you?
Yeah, I got Phoenix. I mean, the Lakers offense is a real concern. Meanwhile, the season that Kevin Durant is having, and he's back now. He just came back from his short time off and dropped 30 again. The season Durant is having is abject insanity. He's shooting 49% from 3, 51 from the field. Like he is pushing on 50, 50, 90 right now. And I'm not saying that's like going to keep up, but 16 games of 50, 50, 90 while averaging more than 30 a game is obscene.
Well, and
This
also
at 35.
Yeah, 31.3 a game, but also on this team that obviously has gone the the outside the box point guard route with Devin Booker running the show most of the time. In the post Chris Paul era, he's got 5. Durant's got 5.5 assists. I mean, the
And no
playmaking is
help
there.
from Bradley Beal, by the way.
Yeah, no Bradley Beal. It's impressive. It makes for an incredibly interesting West contender because they are really good already. I know they've scuffled a bit, but you see what they could be as long as Book is out there. I mean, I look at it here; they're 8-2 in games that Devin's played in. So eventually, I know the Beal thing I think it's going to take a while, but they're going to be in the conversation certainly later in the year.
Yeah, and I mean, to Fred's point, like what him, Steph Curry, and obviously LeBron at his age are doing, what they're all doing at their individual ages is crazy. I mean, it's kind of unprecedented, and I'm not sure. We'll see. I mean, obviously, like it's in the modern day, it's a little bit easier to age later just because of like technology, all that stuff, medical advancements, but we're also just watching 3 like absolute all-time greats in their like fading days. Hold on as long as possible, which is special for an NBA fan, right? Because you get to see them longer than probably you ever imagined at this top level. But also, like, it'll one day end for all 3, and I think we're learning just how special all 3 of them are in so many ways.
I agree.
Remember when Steph got 4 for 48 in an extension, and the reason it was so small was because people were worried about his longevity with his ankles. Now it's like the guys have him historic longevity into his mid-30s, just still being as dominant as ever.
Right.
Durant tore his Achilles, still putting up insane numbers, still can defend. Unbelievable.
Agreed. Slater, Suns, Lakers pick, or did you make it already?
I said Suns.
Okay. Fred, what'd you got there?
Phoenix.
All right. Kings, Pelicans, the game in Sacramento. Slater was very happy he didn't have to fly to New Orleans to cover that one with the Warriors falling. I will pick the Pelicans in that one. The locals won't like that, but Kings just dropped 2 games to them.
Oh, well, I think Sam's neighbors are booing him right now.
Right. I do. I mean, it's funny. Super producer Dave DeFore, who's helping us this week, highlighted the fact. I mean, Zion Williamson just had himself a historic night at the office. Please remind me who that was against. He hits 11 of 12 shots, 33 points.
They killed the Sixers.
That's right. With no Embiid, but like monstrous stuff. And watching a lot of those Pelicans Kings games, I mean, the Kings are a high-powered offensive team that struggle defensively, and when it comes to size and that combo of Brandon Ingram and what he can do and Zion down low, they just had nothing for him. It was closer in the second matchup when the Kings lost that back-to-back recently, but it's just a tough matchup for them.
Yeah, in the first game, like, it was second night of a back-to-back. Mike Brown kind of indicated that they wanted the Kings to double Zion a lot. Like, that was kind of the game plan, and I don't know if they were just, like, slow to execute. But Zion was just, catch, rip, go to the rim, finish, going left. They couldn't stop him going left. No Keegan Murray in the second game, and Keegan Murray still has not returned, but I do think he probably will be
Lower
back for
back
that.
issue.
Yeah.
By the way, Slater, this fits nicely into the segment that we were workshopping off air the other day, where we said we decided that occasionally we're going to have a Slater and Sam glasses half full, half empty King segment, because every time there's a debate, of course I come in and pick the opponent. I'm always that guy.
This dates back to midseason last year, where they were sitting at like the 4 seed or whatever, and Sam's
it's
like,
not
I gotta
real.
blow it. Have you ever seen Major League 2? Randy Quaid in Major League 2?
Of course, yeah.
That's saying they'll blow it in the playoffs. out in the bleachers. So just like you said, to fit well for this segment, glass half empty is picking the Pelicans to storm into Golden One and shut the beam off and go to Vegas. And I think with proper context they did beat them 2 times, like a week ago, basically. But the Kings are at home. That crowd's gonna of all the crowds of those 4 quarterfinals. I mean, I assume all are going to be good, but I think we know the Kings crowd is going to take it like, serious. Like it's going to feel like a playoff game, just because it's just matches.
Quick shout out to the crowd in that Warriors Kings game again, because I got the unique pleasure of sitting courtside. There was a lady behind us who Kings are down 12. I joked with Jim Ice, the legendary photographer from the NBA, who was sitting next to me. I said, man, I need this lady in my life. Like, forget about basketball, but she's behind us and the Kings are down 12. and it's okay, guys, 12-0 run. Let's go. It's time for a 12-0 run. They're down 20. Come on, guys, 20-0 run. It starts now. It starts now. You can do it. So the energy was, she was the persistent voice in the room. They got that done. Fred, does that get the Kings over the top against the Pels?
I think I'm going to go with the Pels. I really like the way they're playing right now. I mean, I know they didn't, that Philly didn't have Embiid last night. Defensively, though, that team is really rolling. I know they lost a couple of times in Utah, but defensively, they have been really good for like 3 weeks now. Really look like another level. Since November 13th, they're actually 4th in points allowed per possession. And ever since Zion Williamson had that press conference where he talked about, like, hinted at not being comfortable in his role.
Right.
You know, his role hasn't really seemed all that different from what it was last year from the outside. Ever since that, he's looked more like Zion Williamson. Like, there was a point not that long ago when Zion was shooting like 51% from the field. And while that's not a bad number, that is so far off from what we see from Zion in his career. He makes his living. The reason he's so dominant is because he gets to the hole whenever and however he wants. He's like a mini Shaq, and then he's able to finish there. And he has this beautiful touch when he gets there too. It's not just physically overpowering. And he's got this incredible layup package. He was shooting 51%, and he basically takes just shots around the rim in all twos. And that just, it wasn't Zion-like. And then the last 5 games, he has just turned it on. I think he's asserting his, as Charles Barkley always says, is asserting his will more. You see late in games, he's really initiating the offense a ton, which I think is one of the most fun things to watch in basketball when they just hand over the offense to him. He's shooting 65 from the field over that stretch. He's averaging 28 a game. Like, he has been much better in the amount that he is getting to the hole. He's getting to the line more. And he's finishing there a lot more often. He just looks like Zion. Also, maybe they kind of have Sacramento's number because they did blow him out earlier this year, and then they played him like a night later, and they beat him again. And often we see those 2 games split. It's hard to beat a team twice. So let's go Pels.
Fred must have just blanked out over the 2-minute segment where we just talked about those 2 games, Fred. Jeez.
Yeah,
what are you doing? Are you playing Tetris on the side here? Come on, man.
I wish.
All right,
I'm talking to you too.
I'm gonna move us forward. I'm taking Suns over. I'm saying Kings, and I'm taking Suns Celtics in the finals, and I'll take the Suns to win it.
I don't know if we can do. I mean, I guess we each can do winning scenarios, but we got a different championship. Yeah, I got Pels over the Kings. I got Suns over Lakers. I got Suns over Pels, and then I had Suns. Let's see, on the East, I had the Bucks and the Celtics coming through.
You said Celtics.
I said Celtics. Yeah, I got Boston. I got a Joe. You know, Joe Mazzulla has got more in-season tournament coaching energy than any of the remaining 8 coaches. I mean, you know, the dedication that it takes to hack a Drummond, the absolute kind of reckless abandon with which he's leading his team. I think that gets him to the Vegas mountaintop.
Oh, he's unquestionably coach of the tournament right now.
Yes.
Are they
doing like a, okay, Boston wins the in-season tournament. Is it like, is there an expectation there's going to be a championship like celebration, confetti, half
parade
court
at home back in Boston?
Commissioner. I mean, obviously, I don't expect like Jason Tatum to cry and throw the ball in the air or whatever. But like, are they going to bring the team to like center court and like have Adam Silver out there? Like,
I don't know the answer.
Champions.
The idea that I've heard, I wish I could credit the person, but I've heard it twice independently, is that I would love them to adopt is, I think Rachel Nichols might have been one of them, was that the champion and all of that $500,000 cash money that they just won, it all goes on a roulette table or some kind of table in the middle of the court post celebration. And you have to make the choice to gamble your winnings in Vegas style and see if you feel like, doubling your money, tripling your money, or losing it all by the wayside. I mean, if you're going to do the Vegas thing, lean in and have some kind of post-title purse element gambling wise. But as far as the actual celebration, I don't know.
As healthy as that sounds, I'm not sure they're going to do it.
I mean, let's stop pretending they're not so deeply in bed with the gambling industry. So
I mean, the Dallas Mavericks are going to play in a casino apparently. So
my God,
you're right.
Indeed. All right, we have.
Wait,
go ahead.
I'm
sorry.
Your predictions.
We know your pick. We know your.
I don't get to make my
Pacers.
I'm going
Tyrese for MVP.
I'm going the Suns come out of the West, and Tyrese Halliburton goes for 40 and 15 in the championship game, and the Pacers win the whole damn thing.
He had to do it. All right.
Yeah.
Take us.
They're coming off that horrific loss to Portland. I don't know if you guys watched that loss to Portland. Oh, that was terrible.
I mean,
You know,
I'm
gonna manifest this, Fred. I that's really corny. I actually always roll my eyes when people talk about manifesting, but I'm gonna do it anyway. It's time for us to, shout out to Pacers PR, Michael Preston. Tyrese Halliburton needs to come on this pod, and you guys can just have your little love affair and talk about, all things Pacers for the entire time. And I just want to see you just shower him with praise, and he needs to be aware of the energy that you're putting out.
He is a phenomenal player. And right now, bits aside, podcast bits aside, he really is, I think, the player I enjoy watching the most.
He's
right now.
Incredible.
How do you enjoy watching him and his teammates play defense right now?
Actually, I enjoy it tons because I have no emotional investment. I forget who it was. Somebody made the joke that the Pacers are the best league pass team in the league, and the second best league pass team in the league is whoever the Pacers are playing. It's fantastic. They're first in offense, they're 28th in defense. It's
119.3 rating right now.
Their games are insane. They play so fast, but Halliburton is so fun, especially because his jumper is so freaking ugly. And every time he puts it up, no matter how many times you've seen him shoot, you're like, that's a horrible shot. That's going to miss by 12 feet. And then it goes in like 40 something % of the time. And it's a marvel every time. It's part of the experience. I'm into it. Pacers
we're going to make that happen. We're going to have a Pacers pod. That's going to happen. I want to make that happen. But in the interest of not giving our loyal listeners false advertising, because we have gotten so carried away with in-season tournament talk that we're way deeper in the pod than planned on. Let's make the rounds on some of the teams that we talked about. And Slater, predictably, I'm going to start with you because you got the biggest, or at least the closest thing. See if this is an accurate statement. I mean, the Clippers are a little messy. The Warriors are perhaps messier. When you talk about them starting 6-2, losing 8 of 10, I believe. Since then, you thought they could go to Sacramento and have the warm, fuzzy blanket that is a win over the Kings, because they had, I think, beat the Kings 7 of 8 of the previous matchups going back to the playoffs last year. You thought that would kind of be the get right game for them. Instead, it's about as heart-wrenching a loss as they've had in quite some time. You had the Draymond return in Sacramento that, I don't know your opinion on this, but Draymond being Draymond is one thing. I was still a little surprised that for him to have the kind of, finish that he had in his first game back after the 5-game suspension was surprising. A lot of tension there, I think, at least in game. Lots happening with your team. How off the tracks are they?
Yeah, it was interesting. They had the best half of the season, right? I mean, you were there for the first half. It was like Wiggins had 18, Clay had 17, and that's been their biggest combo issue early in the season was those two offensively. And they went up 24, which, by the way, they hadn't blown a 24-point lead, I think, since like 2011 or something like that. So it set up, and because Draymond was coming back, I mean, Steve Kerr kind of talked about the seriousness of the moment pregame of like, this was kind of the pivot point early in the season. Like, all right, got the rotation back, got to take things serious. And I think the most detrimental thing that happened, we could talk about the Draymond stuff. We can talk about some of the coaching mistakes laid and some of the veteran mistakes, the turnovers in the final minute that made it a disaster night. But the worst thing that happened to them, Gary Payton tore his calf muscle and is going to be out months. And likely, they're figuring out a timeline right now, but he's going to be out a while. And Chris Paul has a nerve issue in his leg that they're trying to solve. I mean, it's going to be kind of like day-to-day treatment type process right now. But his first he had played every game and played well to this point of the season, and his first injury bug has popped up. So they lost 2 vital rotation pieces, along with blowing a 24-point lead, along with getting eliminated from the in-season tournament, along with the Draymond continued kind of issue right now with kind of his inability to stay out of the referee's way and the league's out of the league's target. So Not great. And then at the end, Steve Kerr's under a little bit of local fire because he has the challenge that doesn't work and leaves him without a timeout late. And then he benches Moses Moody, who was the hottest player on the floor, and then has now admitted it was a coaching mistake to put Moody on the bench. So yeah, not going great. 8-10. They get the Clippers twice this week, so I think your theory is going to be challenged. Who is in a tougher spot in the West? Them and the Clippers. They're about to play in San Francisco Thursday night and in LA on Saturday afternoon.
Oh, I didn't know they had
Okay,
both. I hate the fact that we're recording and we won't have the results of the game tonight. But yeah, that is a good little competition. Fred,
I got to ask Slater this, because the craziest part of their season, it wasn't that long ago, we were on here talking about how the bench is playing great. Now the bench is playing great. You pair it with that insane starting lineup, and all of a sudden, is this team a contender again? And that was based off of years and years of information that this starting lineup was awesome as recent as last year. Like, their starting lineup last year was the best lineup in the league, plus 22 per 100 possessions. They annihilated teams, and we just kind of all figured that would continue because they all know how to play so well together. And Clay he's off to a slow start, and Draymond has obviously missed time and all that kind of stuff. But their starting five, Curry, Thompson, Wiggins, Draymond, Looney, which annihilated the league last year, is -9 per 100 possessions, according to Cleaning the Glass. They were plus 22 last year. What?
Yeah.
It's not like Curry is falling off some cliff. Like, Slater, what the hell is happening there? And how concerning is that? Like, is that just going to come roaring back, or do you see things that are concerning to where that lineup is right now? The numbers say that lineup is bad. And is it just not as good? Like, where do you think that falls?
Well, Andrew Wiggins, the first 3-4 weeks of Andrew Wiggins' season, he cratered every lineup he was in. He was like that bad of a volume shooter and like ball handler, and his defense, he was kind of working back into condition. He had a rough summer, he breaks his ribs in the playoffs, so there's some level of recovery. He didn't come into camp like ready, really. And that was paired with Klay Thompson, who had some decent games very early in the season, including the game winner against the Kings. But then he just dipped into a really big funk that obviously when Klay Thompson's in a funk, he tries to shoot himself out of a funk, right? He doesn't just like sink to the background. It's more like, maybe this is the night I score 55 points. So when you have your second and third best scorers in just like combo slumps, which, the crazy stat early in the season, we were looking at like, game 10, game 11, and the Warriors still didn't have anyone on the team besides Steph who'd scored 20 in a game. So he just didn't have enough help. And when Clay and Wiggins aren't scoring, Draymond and Looney are not just going to like pick up the scoring load. So that's basically 4 of your 5 starters are not, helping out offensively. It killed the spacing. They weren't defending as well because I think Clay's, taking a step back slowly every year defensively because of his injuries. Wiggins just was out of it. And you mentioned Draymond. Draymond sprains his ankle, misses camp, misses the first 2 games. He's a little bit out of rhythm, although when he's been on the court, he's actually played pretty well. And then, of course, he gets ejected in 1 game. 2 games later, it's the headlock in the first minute of a game. He's ejected from that game, and then he has a 5-game suspension. So it's just no rhythm, no continuity. There's still internal belief if like those 5, especially because Wiggins is playing better now. He's had 2 really big games recently, shooting better. Clay's had scored 20 in 3 out of the last 4. There's a belief maybe a month from now, if Draymond stays on the floor and everything kind of comes together a little bit better, they might still look like one of the better 5-man lineups in the league. But right now you're correct. It's been one of their worst lineups.
I want to make sure we save time at the end here for the Knicks and Fred's view on them. So my quick 2 cents on the Clippers, having seen them last night, talked to their people, actually of the people I connected with. As always, I'm a sucker for PJ Tucker, rhyming not intended. PJ has essentially kind of been part of the James Harden experience from Houston to Philly and now to the Clippers. Why are you laughing so hard, Fred?
I'm just thinking of the double entendre. Go on.
Okay. I will continue.
I'm 5 years old.
PJ's view on the Clippers was very candid. That's why he's always a go-to interview for me. And the line that he dropped that certainly stuck in my head in terms of candor was, there's not enough basketballs on the planet for this team. And that's just the truth. Now, that being said, I'm going to go silver lining mode. they smoked the Kings, dominate them. It was an impressive performance. James Harden, who, by the way, our esteemed Clippers beat writer Law Murray had informed me that going into last night, James had hit 2 shots in a fourth quarter in his entire time with the Clippers, which is remarkable. I don't know what he did in the fourth last night, but it didn't matter because they were up so big. More importantly, in the first quarter, he had 17 points. He was aggressive. He took 5 threes, hit 4 of them. The game before when they had a disastrous loss to Denver without, without Joker, without Jamal Murray, without Aaron Gordon, the Clippers had taken 23s as a team. Ty Lue was upset about that. So then you've got James. I think it was probably a good thing where it kind of woke him up and made him feel comfortable about going out and being James Harden in the first quarter. The other silver lining. So James finds his way offensively a little bit. We'll see if that continues. Being part of a Kawhi Leonard post-game media mix, one thing jumped out at me. He just looks leaner than in years past, which I think, considering his health history, is a good thing. He's always been an incredibly strong dude. I think he's dropped some LBs, and as far as that right knee that's been an issue, that's probably a good thing. But Kawhi Leonard has quietly played in every single game this year, and he's averaging 34.1 minutes, second on the team to Paul George, who has also played in all 17 games. So, this team that has taken a lot of well-deserved criticism for being the load management squad is kind of now the poster, team, if you will, of this new season where the league is trying to get everybody to play. I was down on the Clippers when they made the Harden move. I said to you guys, I did not think ultimately it would work, and I'm certainly not flipping that and saying they're going to win the title. But you can see where they are getting better. Before the Denver game, they had won 4 of 5, I believe.
I did watch that Denver game, so maybe that's coloring my, current opinion on them. And I'm about to literally be at their next 2 games, so we'll see. But man, that Denver game was about as bad a loss I've seen from any team this season. I just watched Reggie Jackson and DeAndre Jordan just pick them apart from a pick and roll perspective. Harden's defense was terrible in that game, and it just was such a bad loss that I need to see a little bit more.
The defense is really good. There's not enough balls on the planet is quite a quote.
Yeah.
That's quite a quote. It's well said.
Also, well, the other part of the conversation that he admitted was self-serving is a little strong, but like we talked about the fact that when you have 4 stars, I told PJ, I said, I recently saw Austin Rivers, former Clipper, former, NBA journeyman who's now doing media stuff. He was on SportsCenter analyzing the Clippers. And the point that Austin made was that when you've got 4 stars, he said, no disrespect to those guys, but stars are not known for setting hard screens, diving for loose balls, doing all the grimy stuff, winning 50-50 balls that you need to have on a winning team. And, he essentially was describing, I thought, himself a bit, and even to a greater degree, PJ Tucker. Well, PJ I don't think he played at all last night. He's not getting minutes. So they have a lot to work through. I don't know if it's lip service, but tried to press Ty Lue on this a little bit, to Harden's credit to this point, and I think I'll learn more tonight. But he came in with the messaging being that he's there to win a championship and to be selfless, and he's not worried about his numbers. Now, the skeptics and cynics of James Harden, which are many within the league, I'm not talking media, within the league, had pointed to the fact that, if you talk about that Rockets subplot from the summer when Houston supposedly, and I've heard this independent from the reports, supposedly had been given the indication that James Harden wanted to come back to Houston in order to be James Harden, which is to say lead the league in scoring. That was a turnoff for them. So the idea was, why would you believe that he's willing to sacrifice with the Clippers if that's where his head is at? And so far, he's not raising a stink, and he is sacrificing in a massive, massive way. I mean, he is at, let me find it here. It's way down the list. He is at 9.8 shots a game in his 12 Clippers games. And Paul George for the season is doubling that at 18. He's trying. It's not working on a lot of nights, but I do think in terms of his spirit, he's approaching it the right way.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between not necessarily taking over and being unselfish. Like I find he's taking some more catch and shoots. That's a good thing. He's taking about 3 catch and shoot threes a game right now. He's shooting 36% on them, and that is a lot more than it was before. I think it was at 1.8 last year with Philly. But you still want to see that kind of stuff come up. Like they're still learning how to play together. And one thing that I have learned while covering the NBA is that decision making on an NBA court, we a lot of time think it has to do with intelligence, but sometimes it just has to do with or maybe even personality, but sometimes it just has to do with habits. And you build up all these habits year after year after year after year, and you might have the right intentions, but it's hard to get out of those habits. And I think Harden is still learning how to play with that kind of stuff. But you know what? If we're going to be Clippers optimists, I think they're really good defensively. I think Zubats is good in the middle, and you still have PG and Kawhi playing fantastic defense on the wings. Like they, even with like Harden at the top and them getting diced up by DeAndre Jordan and him having his best game in a million years, like they are a good defensive team, and they have a wonderful defensive win tandem when they're healthy, and that's going to bode well for them. But like, I'm not putting them above any of the top teams in the West right now.
I hear you on all that. It was interesting when Paul George was asked post game about the integration of James. He actually focused on the defense, not James's defense, the team defense, and just said for us it's going to be on that end. So I agree with that aspect of it. I also Ty Lue made the point that to me is something that historically is really interesting to monitor. Is he cited a couple super teams from the past and made the distinction that if you talk about the Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen Celtics, or the Heatles in Miami, or the LeBron, D Wade, Chris Bosh Cavs, I know I just put Wade on the Cavs. Apologies. But those Cavs teams that you had wings and a big. You had Kevin Love, you had Kevin Garnett, you had Chris Bosh, and that you talk about not enough basketballs on the planet. The big was typically the guy who was sacrificing. Now in Boston, some of that was Ray Allen, but this team, you're talking about, if you go ahead and make sure you include Russell Westbrook, because he was playing well for the Clippers before James came to town, you got 4 guards, and that idea and that roster construction, that's a different kind of sacrifice where even if your attitudes are right, in terms of the functionality of the team, it's a different formula than some of these other super teams we've seen.
Yeah. And Russ has struggled off the bench.
He's not really struggled.
He's had a couple of nice moments, but he has really not been the same coming off the bench. And again, like it's just sometimes it's a habits thing, sometimes it's a comfort thing.
I think Ty Lue is going to be
was putting up like it. I don't think Russ was doing anything other than being willing to go to the bench. I mean, I was told that he offered it up over the summer. That he said that he would be down to do it, that he and Ty Lue had the conversation if there's a Harden trade or if there's a Lillard trade. Russ said, yeah, I'll go to the bench if that happens. And so that was like already figured out when the Harden trade was made. So I don't think, and Ty Lue came out and said like he approached Lue about going to the bench. So I think it's just like, it's not like he's never come off the bench. He did it with the Lakers, but I don't think he was comfortable there either. And it's a habits thing, and I don't know. I don't think this team is better than Denver. I don't think it's better than Phoenix. I don't think it's better than Oklahoma City.
I just don't know what they are. And actually, I'm kind of excited to see how they look in March. That's it. But I also think, lastly, on this front, that Ty Lue is he's gonna make his money this year, which is to say, like, when it comes to not playing a proud veteran like PJ Tucker, and Kobe Brown got the minutes last night, and Ty made it really clear that Kobe's going to get a lot of minutes going forward. Dealing with Russ, where it's one thing to say I'm willing to come off the bench, it's another one. You're playing 19 minutes last night. Fewer than that, I think, the game before. These are, Ty's making tough decisions. I actually asked him about, like, is there any connective tissue between his Ty's Team USA experience in the summer, where you certainly learn how to use a roster that has, maybe too much talent. That's kind of a national team dilemma every single time out. And trying to figure these Clippers out. And he did talk about how you learn stuff about managing egos and personalities. But it's obviously very different. So they're just an interesting team, and they're not going to be, I don't think, the kind of train wreck that we forget about in January, February. We're going to be, kind of analyzing them all the way through. All right. I didn't leave you a lot of time for your Knickerbockers, Fred, but we got to get into your team. They are living that IST life in the Elite Eight in the tournament. How's your squad looking these days?
They're playing well. Like, I know they're 10-7 right now, but like, they're playing good basketball. You look at the profile, and they have the profile of a team that's pretty good. I'm starting to think that I think I picked them 5th in the East and coming into the year, maybe 4th. And I'm starting to think that's probably right about where they're going to end up. They're 11th in offense right now. They're 5th in defense. The defense has been so much better than it was last year. And if Julius Randle can straighten out whatever the heck is going on with him, and he's been much better over the last 3 weeks or so than he was at the start of the season when he was a disaster, then you have something, because Jalen Brunson got better. And that is a huge thing. Mitchell Robinson has taken a massive leap. And if the season were to end right now, now that all defense is positionless, you don't have to worry about like Bam and Rudy Gobert knocking him off. Like, I think he's having one of the 10 best defensive seasons in the league. He's been phenomenal defensively. I think he's making arguments to maybe hop onto a couple defensive player of the year ballots, not necessarily get a first place vote, but maybe hop into some third place. He's been that good defensively, and is having a historic offensive rebounding season. And you look through, like, RJ Barrett has been better. Josh Hart's starting to play better. Like, I think this team is pretty good. They get a little screwed because the reason as do a lot of the teams in the in-season tournament, because the reason they made the in-season tournament, and now because they made the in-season tournament, they got an extra game against the Bucks, and they now have to play the Bucks, one of the best teams in the NBA, 5 times this season. And it's like,
Right.
if they had just beaten Charlotte by like 3 on Tuesday, they would have still gotten the regular season win just as much. Winning by 25 matters just as much as winning by 3 when we're talking about what goes in the wins column. And they wouldn't have made the in-season tournament. And they almost certainly would have been playing a team that's worse than the Bucks. So they get a little screwed. And now they have an extra road game that they got against the Bucks. So it's a lot. That's kind of a flaw in the in-season tournament. I don't know how you fix it. I don't know if they ever fix it, but that's kind of a flaw where it's like you're making your schedule more difficult and potentially making your regular season record worse. So that's something that I think could be ironed out. But they're playing pretty good basketball. Like, they're being the team they're supposed to beat. They've lost some teams they shouldn't. They had a bad effort game against Phoenix, which was an aberration when they didn't have Durant and Beal. And they're basically maximizing their talent.
On a scale of 1 to 10, and it's early because we're still in, are we December yet? No, we're on the 30th of November. Scale of 1 to 10, how aggressive do you think your Knicks might be as we get closer to the trade deadline for adding a player of actual significance?
Yeah, I think they'll be pretty aggressive.
Yeah,
I think they definitely will. Look, they've been
8.
building. Yeah, so they've been building towards, obviously, the chase for a star. And I don't think they're like going to get into the Zach LaVine or DeMar DeRozan hunt. That's not what I think. But I do think that they know they could use a big wing who can shoot and guard big wings. I do know they made a hot pursuit for OG Anunoby heading into last year's trade deadline. They made a legit offer for him, and Toronto just wasn't trading him. And we don't know how it's going to go, but Anunoby's a free agent after this year. Obviously, he's got the CAA connections where he's rep by CAA, and the Knicks have, all these former CAA people running the team, and he makes a perfect basketball fit. I could see something like that. They have a full 9-man rotation right now, but I could see them finding something. And I'm not saying it's Anunoby for sure. It could be anyone. But like last year, for example, they trade Cam Reddish, who wasn't in their rotation. They attach a first-round pick to the deal, and they bring back Josh Hart. And Hart really helped them. And they have 4 protected picks from other teams, all of their own picks. And I could see them making some sort of similar trade at the deadline. I know they don't believe that, this huge star they might be after is going to become available during the season. They think next summer at the earliest, and maybe that's, Donovan Mitchell or somebody else, whoever it might be. But I could see them doing that sort of trade, like a Josh Hart-like trade. They've still got Evan Fournier's $18 million salary. You could throw Fournier. We don't know what's going to happen with Emmanuel Quickly, who didn't extend before this season. And by the way, I had conversations about that on my new podcast, Cats and Shoot, which you can subscribe to at patreon.com/Cats and Shoot, KATZ and SHOOT. And you'll enjoy it. There are lots of Knicks conversations there. Had Nate Duncan on yesterday. But anyway, I didn't just say that.
What a slick promo. Just slid that right in. Way to go, buddy.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things with Quickly is, they couldn't come to an extension with him before the season. And he wanted a good chunk of change, especially after Vassell and Jaden McDaniels extend for 135-ish over 5 years. And the Knicks didn't feel like they could pay that number to somebody who they view as a reserve because they already have Jalen Brunson. And we don't know what's going to happen with Quickly now. Like, okay, what if Quickly gets an offer like that in restricted free agency? I mean, I know the Knicks view him as really important to what they're doing now, but around this time last year, they were calling around the league and seeing what they could get for him. And then he really broke out and played the best basketball of his life. And he's playing really well this year again. But the Knicks are not, historically, they have taken calls on Quickly before. I know they offered Quickly for at least one really good veteran in his prime over the summer. That was, I shouldn't say offered, but it was a discussion with another team Quickly for a really good veteran in his prime. So like, I think that's something to watch. I think trading a trade on the margins is something to watch, especially if we're talking about potentially bringing in a defensive minded wing who could help them.
Good stuff, my friend. We lost Mr. Slater to fatherhood, which is always a dicey proposition, as I can attest. Thank you, as always, to the loyal listeners. Fred, thank you for joining. Make sure you check out Fred's new pod, and we'll talk to y'all next week.